Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, and we are here with the Sports Exchange, and I am alongside my co-host, Louis Addeo-Weiss. Welcome back, Louis.
How's it going, Scott?
It's doing pretty good, Louis, and on the line with us is Ryan Skolrud. So, Ryan, let's go ahead and talk what we always talk, and that is fantasy football. What do you got for us, Mr. Skolrud?
Well, to start it off, to kind of make something especially relevant for down in your neck of the woods, me being up in Seattle and you in South Florida, the fact that Gardner Minshew is having such a solid fantasy season. I mean, yeah, he's got a lot of the intangibles that you need, like in real life football, and his ability to make the throws. But the fact that he is putting up a consistent amount of fantasy points is kind of ridiculous, considering that he came in the first half of game number one because Foles goes down with a broken collarbone. And even including game number one, Gardner Minshew has managed to, in all 5 games, put up at least 16 fantasy points for quarterbacks. Now, while that seems pretty good, you also have to look at the fact that only 2 other quarterbacks have done that through the first 5 games of the season. The other 2 are Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray. So, putting it in that context, just looking at the kind of season that Gardner Minshew is having already, in terms of fantasy statistics, is phenomenal. It'd be interesting to see with how they've been doing, especially winning some of these games. Especially, the one that I look at especially is the comeback victory against Denver. A minute or so left and go marching all the way down the field to get the field goal, get themselves in the field goal position to win that game. He has really proven to be quite the leader on the field, and because of it, he may not. Who knows if he'll actually come off the field once Foles comes back.
Yeah, it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? I mean, it's not like they're in any hurry for Foles to come back, but yet all they've done is commit to $88 million. I guess I'm going to go back to what I've said before, and Louis, feel free to chime in anytime you want, okay? He had an awful lot of reps during preseason. I mean, an awful lot of reps. Everybody knew what Foles could do, and they wanted to make sure he got that time. So it beckons a lot of people to wonder, everybody's looking to get rid of preseason games, which is inevitable anyways. But here's a young guy who's actually benefited because of those game time reps.
Yeah.
What about you? What do you think?
I mean, he actually had a pretty good game last week. He did draw a couple of sacks, but, a career-high 374 passing yards, though attribute that to, 44 pass attempts. I mean, it's going to be interesting once Foles comes back. I'm not 100% sure where Foles is status-wise. I know he suffered that injury week 1, and we're entering week 5. But, in my opinion, 9-1 so far touchdown to interception ratio. Why not keep riding it? Although these next couple of games are going to be a big test. I know he has, New Orleans coming up this weekend, so that can be an easy win if Teddy Bridgewater struggles to read the Jacksonville defense, or as I like to commonly refer to them, or as Al Michaels and Collinsworth refer to them as Saxonville. That good defense.
Yeah, it's the thing about the New Orleans defense. If looking at it from a fantasy perspective, is they have actually given up the 3rd most amount of fantasy points to the quarterback position. You look at they did a pretty good number last week of stopping up the Tampa Bay offense for the most part. Especially if you look at what Marshawn Lattimore did to Mike Evans, allowing 3 targets and no receptions. The problem is it's whoever's not being guarded by Marshawn Lattimore is going off. Last week, take Chris Goddard, who right now, believe it or not, in fantasy, in half-point PPR fantasy, is the number 1 wide receiver. He finished with another 125 yards and 2 touchdowns. He leads the league right now in receiving touchdowns with 6.
That's kind of what the Saints have even been with Breeze. I mean, I have their kicker in my fantasy league just because I know that, Drew Brees is a very elite passing quarterback. That's his primary means of, scoring for his team. He's not a great mobile quarterback. He's not necessarily a dual threat, but you're going to have a lot of high-scoring games, and Sean Payton has had problems with his defense while he's been there. They've won a Super Bowl. They came pretty close a couple of years ago. but they've always had problems with that defense. So, I mean, this is going to be an interesting game Sunday. Regardless of what happens, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if this is a 2-touchdown win for Jacksonville. If that defense is working, if Jalen Ramsey is, he's back and he's playing and he's committed, that's going to be, they could win this game relatively easily. Bridgewater, as good as he is, he's a different quarterback. They run a different system with him as opposed to Breeze, because Breeze doesn't really use the legs the way that Bridgewater has the ability to. And, that kills a lot of time on the clock. But Breeze, he's a quick release. He's kind of like Brady, not going to use the legs. But, if Minshew continues to play the way he does, if that offensive line is solid and not, ensuring that he's going to avoid the sacks, which he had 2 of them last week in that 34-27 loss, it could be a pretty ugly game for New Orleans.
Well, amazingly enough, Candy and I will provide live coverage here for the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. Will be leaving immediately after the Florida Atlantic University Middle Tennessee game, so it'll be pretty interesting. A few other points we get. We have another 15 minutes or so to go. Let's stay up to the same game. Christian McCaffrey's having an unbelievable MVP type of season, right, Ryan?
He is. One of the interesting stats. The 2 interesting stats came out from one of our news partners that we use for a lot of our kind of just headlines and that sort of thing. From the Sleeper app, 2 new interesting things came out about Christian McCaffrey this week. After the games this weekend, Christian McCaffrey now has more combined yards, rushing and receiving, than total combined yards for both Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley. Now, understand, Saquon Barkley has been out for a couple weeks, but still, even with that, and Ezekiel missed week 1, even with all that, he has put up so many yards that even with those 2 and their abilities combined, he has still put up more total yards than the 2 of them have in their amount of game time. I mean, he is beyond putting up great numbers. And then the other interesting stat is that the New York Jets, their offenses struggle so much, obviously with Darnold going down, and then they had to move on to whoever their second quarterback was, who ends up breaking his ankle. Now they're down to their 3rd-string quarterback. Darnold will be back this week.
Right.
But the Jets' offenses struggle so much, they're averaging 13.9 yards per drive. Christian McCaffrey himself is averaging 14.2 yards per drive with Carolina.
And this is, I mean, he was incredible last year, 198 yards on the ground. He added some more in the air, 867 receiving yards. I'd argue that he's the best wide receiver or running back in the NFL right now. I mean, if you want a 1-2 punch, and you can even make this case for the MVP candidate so far, Mahomes, 11 touchdowns, no interceptions. If I had a pick today, just because of where I see McCaffrey and how important he's going to be given Kyle Allen's problems of holding on to the ball, his 6 fumbles are second to Minshew and Kirk Cousins, I'd argue that today McCaffrey's the MVP just because, and Mahomes is important to that team in Kansas City, but I think McCaffrey is the most important player to his team of any player in the NFL right now.
Yeah, it's amazing about this guy. I got victimized over the weekend with my brother-in-law that happened to have him, and when he put up 49 points on him, and this guy doesn't know anything about football, which is why he had those auto drafts, which punish people that know anything. Oh, well, so be it. But, yeah, McCaffrey was good for a 49 spot. And yet, ironically, I got burned because of the Philadelphia defense racked up another 36 points less Darnold. So you talk about that's a do me over the weekend. But anyways, let's move on to the next thing, Ryan. A lot of injuries are going on into Thursday night football. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, this is turning into quite the injury report for Thursday night football. You start off with the Giants. The Giants were hoping that Saquon would be back. Right now, it's unlikely that he is going to play in Thursday night football. Sterling Shepard has gone back into the concussion protocol and is likely to miss multiple weeks. Evan Ingram is suffering from a leg injury, and at this point is possibly unlikely to play on Thursday night. And then you have Wayne Gallman, who also has a concussion. So the Giants are down their top 2 running backs and their number 1 wide receiver and their top tight end. So it looks like it's going to be a lot of work for Golden Tate in this game. So, this gives a boost to his fantasy production. But then you look over at the Patriots. While Ben Watson hadn't played yet, the Patriots went ahead and released him. Apparently, he hasn't come back well enough from what his injuries were. Even with the suspension. You have Philip Dorsett, who is dealing with I believe it was a hamstring pull. Well, they think it was a minor thing, but being on the short week, they may hold him out. Right there, that automatically increases Josh Gordon's projection and possibilities. And then you've got Rex Burkhead, who's been battling injury the last couple weeks, who he likely, if he is going to miss this weekend, or this Thursday night game, that's going to push up Sonny Michel a little bit, but really who that's going to help the most is James White.
Right.
So, just all of those injuries, that's going to help, again, that's going to kind of help some other fantasy options for this weekend.
Ironically, when you talk about Michel, Sonny Michel, and you talk about, Gordon, they have fallen out of disfavor for yours truly, just so you know. If you get my drill. Okay, so...
Yeah.
So, let's talk about Jordan Howard. He's become the running back to own in Philadelphia. And I know the one guy that never seems to go away is a guy by the name of Darren Sproles.
He just re-signed with them, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, Darren Sproles did re-sign. Here's the thing about Jordan Howard. It was the way that Philadelphia has run their backfield for years now has pretty much been a committee approach.
Right.
When it was, Jay Ajayi, LeGarrette Blount and Darren Sproles, and then before that it was a little bit of Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles. A few years before it was Ryan Matthews and Darren Sproles. It was they throw in Corey Clement and Wendell Smallwood. So you have a massive committee running the ball, which always makes headaches for fantasy owners because you don't know who to use, who is going to be the hot hand that night. Well, the head coach Doug Peterson just said that they want to get Jordan Howard the ball more often and get him more carries as they go on now through the season. In the last 3 games, he has finished with 11 carries for 37 yards, 15 for 87, and 13 for 62. He is now so in the last 2 games alone, he has averaged 5.8 and 4.8 yards per carry. So he is really running the ball well. He's had 4 rushing touchdowns and, believe it or not, a receiving touchdown. This is a guy that they shipped out of Chicago because they didn't feel that he could catch the ball well enough, and has actually been involved a little bit in the passing game in Philadelphia now. So just very interesting to see that. We really love Jordan Howard in terms of skulking. And part of that may be because my brother, who has helped me out with the website in the past, his twin brother is named Jordan Howard Skolrud. So we've always loved Jordan Howard, just partially for that reason, and they have the same birthday. So I think that Jordan Howard at this point right now, he is going to be the running back to own in the Philadelphia backfield until something happens injury-wise where they're forced to give Miles Sanders more work.
Well, I think the one thing Jordan Howard has going for him, Ryan, is that you've got Doug Peterson as his head coach, and like Frank Reich, these are 2 quarterbacks that understand and they get it. You know what I mean? So they understand how important it is to have a running back that's versatile. I don't know who he had as a head coach that really believed in with the Bears compared to where he's at now with Doug Peterson.
Well, it was Matt Nagy last year who really utilized Tariq Cohen a whole lot, and then they went ahead and drafted David Montgomery, who is very much in the same mold as Kareem Hunt, who Nagy had as an offensive coordinator in Kansas City. Before that, Scott, who was the coach before Nagy? It was.
Well, that's what I was asking you about. Wasn't it Mark Trestman, I believe, wasn't it?
For the Eagles?
No, we're talking about for the Bears.